Ah yes, Eevee, the Pokemon that most people used to say was their favorite instead of Pikachu or Charizard just so they could seem quirky and cool, who has now grown into essentially Pokemon's secondary mascot. And with 8 entire evolutions, this family has eons of interesting trivia to go over. So good morning everybody, good morning, it's JPR. It is really cold in here, that's why I'm wearing this jacket. And here are some interesting facts about every member of the Eevee family. Despite not being an evolution itself, naturally we have to start with the one who started it all. For starters, Eevee is one of the few Pokemon from Generation 1 who wasn't designed by the series' lead artist Ken Sugimori or by Atsuko Nishida, with it being designed by Motofumi Fujiwara instead. Fujiwara was primarily a Pokemon card illustrator, with his work with Game Freak being relatively limited. In fact, pretty much the only work he did for them was design Eevee, Flareon, and Jolteon. Pretty remarkable that with such limited experience, he unintentionally created one of the most iconic Pokemon of all time. Fujiwara is an incredibly private person who almost never speaks to the media about his work on Pokemon, but he once did grant an interview in 2020 about Eevee's origins. In this interview, he said that all he knew going in was that he was tasked with creating a typeless Pokemon that couldn't be identified as any one animal, so it had the potential to become almost anything. Basically, he had to make something as basic yet ambiguous as possible. After creating Flareon and Jolteon, his work was handed off to Atsuko Nishida, who created Vaporeon, and later the rest of the Eeveelutions. Fujiwara says that this is why Eevee, Flareon, and Jolteon have a much more basic look to them than the rest of the family. He said that he specializes in designs that are basic and charming, while Miss Nishida creates designs that are a little more elegant and flashy. Which makes sense given that Nishida has also created Pokemon like Ninetales, Dragonair, Lilligant, Zoroark, Mega Charizard X, and Palmont. They all kinda have that vibe to them. It also explains why Jolteon and Flareon look much more similar to Eevee than the other Eeveelutions, keeping the mane and much more similarly shaped ears. Fujiwara claims that he just made Jolteon and Flareon first because the concepts behind fire and electric were easier to come up with, and then Nishida designed Vaporeon as a water type to balance them out. According to all the designers, they didn't start thinking about specific types Eevee could evolve into until the Game Boy Color came along with Gen 2. They said that even in their imaginations in Gen 1, most Pokemon were created without a specific color in mind. But beginning in Gen 2, they made a deliberate push to create Pokemon with color palettes that reflected their types. And so, Eeveelutions after Gen 1 were created with the idea of filling out the color wheel. It's also worth noting that their types were all of Pokemon's original special types, before the physical special split was introduced in Gen 4. The only special type that hasn't become an Eeveelution yet is Dragon. The designers also said that, like with Pikachu, the anime influenced their decision to gradually redesign Eevee over time, making it look less ferocious and more cute and cuddly. Hey guys, did you know that Vaporeon is Japan's official ambassador for clean water? And the mascot of Japan's official holiday Water Day on August 1st? Wow, good for it! Despite being a poison-type move and never a signature move of Vaporeon's, the move Acid Armor was actually conceptualized around Vaporeon's Pokedex entry of its body melting into water. And while many Gen 1 backsprites contain quote-unquote errors because the Pokemon designs weren't finalized yet, Vaporeon is one of the few Pokemon who didn't have one of the details from its front sprite translated into its artwork, that being its fins on the back of its legs. I say quote-unquote errors because these technically weren't errors at the time. Almost every single Gen 1 Pokemon was designed in sprite form first and then given official Ken Sugimori artwork after the fact that would refine the designs. This is a rare instance where Sugimori stepped in to tamper with the design a bit, removing the fins and changing Vaporeon's face to make it look less dog-like and more ambiguous like the other Eeveelutions. Jolteon and Zapdos have nearly identical names in Japanese, with Jolteon being known as Thunder and Zapdos being referred to as Thunders. So if you ever think the English Pokemon names have gotten bad, just remember Japan has to deal with some way worse stuff. Jolteon is also the only electric-type Pokemon who can be paralyzed in some way in Gen 6 onward. This is because a Jolteon will stay paralyzed if it evolved from an Eevee that had the paralysis condition beforehand. The only other Pokemon who shares this odd oversight with it is Charjabug, who evolves from another non-electric type, Grubbin. Jolteon was also envisioned as the hard mode of Pokemon Yellow, as your rival's Eevee will only evolve into Jolteon if you win the first battle against him in Oak's Lab, as well as the optional battle against him on Route 22. Moving on to Flareon, so fun fact, remember how I said that all the Eeveelutions are based on Pokemon's original special types? Well, Flareon is one of only 2 Eeveelutions that specializes in physical attack, the other being Leafeon. Now, yes, Umbreon does have a slightly higher physical attack stat than special attack, but it's primarily a wall, it doesn't specialize in attacking. And sadly, this is a bit of a curse for poor old Flareon, because Eeveelutions are not very well renowned for their physical move pools. In fact, there are literally only 4 physical moves that Flareon can learn that are not fire or normal type moves. And those are Dig, Bite, Double Kick, and Trailblaze. It used to get Superpower, but it even lost that move going from Gen 8 to Gen 9, so really only Trailblaze somewhat helps it competitively. This poor Pokemon has been screwed over by its stat and move distribution. It is pitifully bad. Espeon is one of the few Eeveelutions to receive a pretty drastic revision to its design between game builds, as it was originally gold-colored in the Pokemon Gold and Silver Space World demo from 1997. Not only because Espeon was meant to be a Pokemon representing the sun with its daytime evolution and access to the move Morning Sun, but also because the Psychic type used to be more aligned with this color than the current day purple. In Gen 1, the Marsh badge that Sabrina gives out is gold, most Gen 1 Psychic types are gold colored, but afterwards Sukimori took over the design and changed it like he did with Vaporeon, because he didn't like that there would be another Eeveelution with a similar color scheme to Jolteon. Speaking of colors, there is another weird inconsistency with Espeon in the anime, where the insides of its ears are usually colored purple even though its ears have always been blue in the games. Espeon and Umbreon are also notably unobtainable in Fire Red and Leaf Green due to the absence of any kind of time cycle in that game. Although the Gen 3 Hoenn games also lack a day and night system, they do at least have the clock in the player's room that keeps track of time. So you can evolve Eevee into Espeon or Umbreon if you trade it to those games first. But you know, trading between Gen 3 games is like the most painful process ever for literally no reason, so who is actually doing that? And while Umbreon did not undergo as much of a drastic design revision as Espeon in Gen 2, it did have its typing completely changed, as Umbreon was originally envisioned as a poison-type Pokemon. Okay, time out. Does anybody remember in that interview where they said that they make the Eeveelution's types based around the color? It seems like they played pretty fast and loose with that rule, didn't they? They even kept this reference to its original typing in its Pokemon Gold Dex entry, which states, "When agitated, this Pokemon protects itself by spraying poisonous sweat from its pores." You would think this is just a leftover bit of text they forgot to take out, but it seems very intentional because this same Dex entry has been reused several times, as recently as Pokemon Sword. And while Umbreon originally had the same black body it has now, its golden rings used to be colored purple. It's very possible that Umbreon was conceptualized before the idea of the dark type was introduced, and it was just going to be poison because at the time that was the most commonly associated type with the night. I mean, not ghost, right? Who would ever want a ghost-type Eeveelution? It's me. Give it to me now, please. And remember those wacky Japanese names I mentioned earlier? Well, a funny one is that for years, Umbreon's Japanese name was officially Romanized as Blackie, but this officially changed on December 19th, 2022. As now, any online information pertaining to Umbreon in Japan, or any Japanese merchandise of Umbreon, is printed as Bracky, likely to avoid any potential racial conversations. Hey, real quick, if you've learned anything new so far, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. It's free, and you'll always be the first to learn all kinds of new things in the future. The fun beta facts don't stop there, though, as Leafeon was actually originally intended to be introduced in Gen 2, albeit with a slightly more complex design consisting of stripes, feet that resembled roots, and a more drooped tail and ears. Internally, it was referred to as Leafy, matching the Japanese names of Espeon and Umbreon, who were Eevee and Blackie. Obviously, it would be scrapped and redesigned with a new Japanese name, Leafia, to match Glaceon, who is named Glacia in Japanese. Speaking of this duo, they suffer a similar fate as Espeon and Umbreon did in Fire Red and Leaf Green, as in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, it is impossible to evolve Eevee into a Leafeon or Glaceon due to the absence of the Moss Rock and Ice Rock. They share this unfortunate distinction with Magnezone and Probopass, who are also unable to evolve due to the absence of an electrical field. Man, what is it with Pokemon remakes and forgetting very vital details? It is a concerning trend even in Pokemon's best remakes. Because of their location-based evolution methods, Glaceon and Leafeon are also locked to the post-game of Black 2 and White 2, despite Eevee and its other 5 evolutions being obtainable in the main story. Because of this, Leafeon and Glaceon were among the first Pokemon to have their evolution methods completely changed in Gen 8, as location-based evolutions were phased out and replaced with stones. This also makes Leafeon the only evolution that can evolve via 2 different methods in one game, as it can evolve with both the Moss Rock and a Leaf Stone in Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Although Eevee is also programmed to evolve the Ice Stone in these games, the item isn't made obtainable anywhere, so Eevee sadly cannot use it to evolve into Glaceon. However, discounting Blue's starter Eeveelution from Pokemon Yellow, Glaceon is the only Eeveelution to ever be used by a champion in the core games, as Cynthia uses one in her battles from Black 2 and White 2. According to that same interview with the Eeveelution designers, the reason why Sylveon looks so different compared to all the other Eeveelutions is because it was the only one to be designed in 3D first. Because of this, the decision to add ribbons that are constantly flowing to its design was made, giving Sylveon a feeling of motion in 3D that the other Eeveelutions lack. But unlike Umbreon, who was also based on a new type, Sylveon was conceptualized as a fairy-type Pokemon from the very beginning. While Sylveon had its evolution method changed in Gen 8 like Leafeon and Glaceon, with affection being retired as a mechanic and replaced with regular friendship, Sylveon is still the only Eeveelution who has never been able to evolve with an item, as Espeon and Umbreon have their friendship evolutions replaced with the Sun Shard and the Moon Shard in Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. But hey, the video's not over yet. We still have some trivia to go over about Eeveelutions more broadly speaking. In fact, Eeveelution itself is a term that started as a fan term but has gradually been adopted as an official term by Pokemon media, most notably being used in a commercial advertising the new Evolving Skies TCG set released in 2021. Although, in the games themselves, they're more often referred to as the Eevees, as this is how Penny refers to her team of Eeveelutions in Scarlet and Violet, and one of Eevee's signature moves in Let's Go Eevee is Eevee Volley. Every Eeveelution also originally used an evolution method that debuted in their own generation. Espeon and Umbreon use a combination of Time of Day and Friendship, both concepts introduced in Gen 2, Leafeon and Glaceon both use location-based evolutions, an idea from Gen 4, and Sylveon originally used Affection in tandem with a Fairy-type move, both concepts from Gen 6. And hey, if you thought Sylveon was meant to be the final Eeveelution, don't fret, because new information has come to light that Game Freak planned for a Flying-type Eeveelution to be in Pokemon Sun and Moon, but it was scrapped after they realized that it looked too similar to fan art that they had seen on the internet. Unfortunately, this is a common rule in Game Freak Studio, and designers have to avoid looking at fan art for inspiration at all costs. Only after a Pokemon is designed will they compare it to concepts from fans on the internet. I guess they just don't want to ever be accused of stealing a fan's design. They want to ensure that what they're making is wholly original to them. But who knows, even though it's been shelved for now, a Flying-type Eeveelution or another type could be coming in the near future. And so that's gonna do it for this video. Let me know in the comment section down below who is your favorite Eeveelution. Mine personally has to be Espeon because I'm a Pokemon Coliseum boy, what can I say, and Espeon did big damage and it was cool. But be sure to like this video if you enjoy, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you guys next time.